Pete Murray, good to have you here, mate.
Yeah, yeah, nice to talk to you.
Mate, I have to say, I don't mean to put your age on you, but I remember being 6 or 7 in the car, absolutely jamming to your tunes on the way to school with mum or on the
Yeah.
way out with the family on the weekend. And it makes me think, you've had such a long, sustained, and successful career, excuse me, in this space. Do you think there is a personal quality or a strength that you have? And I'm talking not about you as a musician, but about you as an individual that's allowed you to stay at the top of your game for so long.
Well, it's hard to say. I think, having a successful song or a successful album in the music business is extremely hard. But having a successful career is even harder than that. Like it's really challenging. I think you've got to be constantly working at this to make sure that you're putting out good music for people to over the years that they keep coming back to it. And
Mm.
I'm lucky over the years as like young fellas like yourself that was six when they first heard my music. I'm still seeing kids today. I played a show only a few weeks back in Sydney, and there was a girl who was five singing every lyric of the song. It's incredible. So, and when the guys grow up, I guess I'm getting a lot now to shows like a lot of you know late teens, at early 20s, right through to the 60-year-olds. So it's basically like grandparents, parents, and kids are all coming to the shows these days. So have been for a while actually. So it's nice to have that happening. But I think for me, I've just got a determination to have this as a career and keep this career going. For me, it's been this is what I want to do. I don't want to stop that. So I love playing live. I love writing music, and it's a kind of it's the best job in the world. So my goal is to keep doing that. And if I can keep getting people to come to gigs, I've got to write good songs. Otherwise they might drop off.
Mate, well, it's beautifully said, and it's almost a full circle moment because whilst you see those generational audience coming through and changing and growing up with the music, you've had the opportunity the last year to bring your young bloke on stage and perform with you, which must feel incredibly special. We look to those scenes and we hold them in high regard in any field, right? Like everyone's recently, I don't know if you follow basketball, I do loosely. We've seen LeBron run out on court with a son of his own and how special that is. How does it feel for you to be able to perform with a young bloke?
Yeah, I saw that the other day with LeBron doing that with his kid. I mean, look, it's great. I actually do this thing called the Byron Sessions, where I interview other artists and we play a song, one of their songs, and I talk to them just artist to artist. And I interviewed Casey Chambers, which hasn't come out yet, but it'll be coming out soon. Because Casey and I have been touring together for a long time, 20 years, doing lots of shows together, and we are now. She's got her son up playing with her and her dad. Like, I mean, it's pretty amazing that she's got that, the whole family. So, my son Charlie's come out playing with me now, and my second son Pedro hasn't really got the music bug yet. I think he will. And my two daughters are really into it. So I couldn't think of anything better than having a family band one day and sort of going out on the road and having fun like that. That'd be great fun. But like I think having your own child come up and sing with you and perform with you and sing on your songs is really a special moment. You're really proud because you love hanging out with them for one, but they think you're cool enough to hang out with you too. Where a lot of kids don't think their parents are that cool, so they don't want to hang out with them. So
Mate, it helps when dad's a rock star, that's for sure.
yeah. But I think the way I've treated the kids over years, like I've been a great parent to them, but I've always been really hands on with my kids and spent a lot of time with them. So I have a very close relationship to them. Um, so to hang out and do that, it's pretty normal, and I think that's makes it easier for them to want to be hanging out with me as well.
It's a funny comment you make there, right? Like you said, it's pretty normal and it makes them want to hang out with you. And you seem to me, from the surface, I don't know you personally, Pete, but we're chatting here today. You seem to me like a pretty normal guy. Like you train, you love a surf, you live that very coastal Aussie life. It's just that your job is a little bit out of the ordinary for most people. And I think
Yeah.
any creative job is a little bit different to most who look at it with a naked eye. But would you say that's a fair assessment? Like you live a pretty normal life?
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't start doing music until I didn't pick up guitar until I was about 21, 22. So that's late. So I've had this whole life before music that was normal. And it was, I was into sport. I did athletics and swimming and played rugby league when I grew up in a small country town, then went to play rugby union. and I love these sports. I love my sport, as Aussies do. Uh, but I guess I was probably lucky enough to fall into music. So music in my 20s, I had a friend I was living with, and we were studying together. And he just came into my room one day and said, "You know what? I'm going to go get a guitar lesson. I've always wanted to do it." So I was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool. I've never thought about that, but I'll do it." So I went and had some lessons, and he didn't do it. So, but he got me started. But through my 20s, it was kind of like I was just having that, because you change so much from 20 to 30. Every decade you seem to change a little bit. From 20 to 30, you change a lot. And the interest you have in your early 20s from when you change by the time you get to 30. So for me, I was going through that period of discovering music, playing covers and just playing artists that I love, to then starting to write songs in my late 20s, to then recording my first independent album. So the 20s was really just a discovery decade for me on, where I wanted to go. And I feel lucky that I found that, where a lot of people don't find that, but I followed my dream and I made that happen. And so for me, I was still I'm still a normal guy, but back then I had a normal lifestyle. In my 30s, when I had the success, things changed a bit, because this job that I was looking for was a job that would take me around the world, would pay me, would give me time. Because my dad died when I was 18. He was only 47. And I remember he'd worked his whole life. He's a watchmaker, jeweler, sold his business. 12 months later, died and didn't get to enjoy his life. So for me, whatever I did, whatever the job was going to be, was going to give me time with my family that I wanted to have. And that's what I've done. So from 30 to 40, that's where things changed for me, and music started to take off, and I had time. I had success, and had time to do things then with my life. And that was, I guess, things where life changes because people know who you are, and you get to play in front of a lot of people. So, there's a fame element that comes with that, and there's a lifestyle that comes with that too. So, but I've always had a lifestyle that's been quiet. I don't want to go and I don't want to go to parties and go to get on the red carpet at events. I choose not to do that. So I'm kind of quite private in my life, and I'm private with my family. We don't put hardly any photos up of my family online, and that's something that I think keeps us normal as well.
It's funny that you mention that life before music, because I often think about how important that must be for people who experience real fame. And some don't get it, like especially this day and age, because it feels like the barrier to entry for fame or notoriety is much lower because of social media. But
Yeah.
maybe it's a little bit more saturated because of it too. But I wonder for you, like, how important do you think it was that you experienced a life before all of this so that you could have enjoyed your music career in a healthy way?
I think fame's an interesting thing, isn't it? Yeah, because a lot of people do have their. Well, Andy Warhol, he said years ago, the artist Andy Warhol said, everyone's going to get their 15 minutes of fame someday in the future, and everyone does now. But is that fame that they're having real? I mean, what have they done to deserve that and to earn that? And I think something that comes and goes very quickly is not. I wouldn't want to have fame like that. You want to have. I don't. To be honest, I don't care about the fame, but I think you want to have. For me, it's all about having a career and doing something that I love doing. The one part of this job is that you get fame from it, because people get into your music and they feel like they know you, because they're listening to your songs and your lyrics all the time, so they feel like they've got this understanding of who you are, and that that does have a price that comes with it. But I think fame, if you've done something that's really great, then it's good to have that fame. If you've done something that's a bit silly, or I don't know, just throwaway stuff, why would you want fame from that? I don't understand that. So it's got to be something that you've done that's good for. I think for me, making people feel good, making people think about their life, what they're doing, inspiring people to change and to do something that's special for themselves. That's what it's all about for me, and that's, if you can do that, then that's a great thing. And that's where you get people that love you even more, love your music even more, because it inspires them to do things that they wouldn't normally do.
You're right. There is a necessary evil to the idea of fame and notoriety in your space. And as you said, the positive is it platforms incredible music, it platforms your ideas, it connects you to people. But what's the cost of it? And has there been a personal cost to you that you can recognize?
I haven't really noticed anything like that, to be honest. It's been because I think I'm careful with it. And I didn't get into this to become famous. That's probably the last thing I wanted. So I don't really worry about the fame side of it, because we try to avoid that as much as we can. So for me, the cost is probably just being busy and being away from family. That's what music. That's the hard thing about it. We have to go away and tour to earn money, and you come back, and that's the tricky thing. But I always put family first, so I try to do minimal amount of touring, or try to cram it into a short space, and so I can come home as often as I can. In the early days, it was very difficult because there was so much going on, and the touring was so full on. So that was hectic in the early days, and everyone wants a piece of you in the early days, but there's just so much going on all the time. So, and I think experiencing that and trying to be able to handle that, to go, okay, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. You kind of feel like you've got to do everything in the early days, I think, to try and keep people happy. And after a while, you're going, okay, I've just got to keep myself and family happy now.
Yeah, I want to lean on some of those lessons that you've learned through this in a minute. But you mentioned earlier losing your dad at the age of 18, and it's such an early stage in his life, right? And how that encouraged you to pursue a life that was fulfilling, that allowed you to have that time to do the things that you love, to be the person that you wanted to be. Do you think that having learnt that lesson the hardest of ways encouraged you into a music career, or did it just encourage you to look towards options that afforded you that?
I wasn't really looking at a music career at first. I was always, when I traveled overseas, I'd been doing some study. I did some natural medicine for a couple of years, and was working in gyms, working with a couple of physios, and I was playing rugby. I injured my knee, and I just decided to take 12 months on and go backpacking overseas. And that just opened up my world, because I've been in Australia my whole life, really, and even just kind of Brisbane was where I was kind of spent most of my time. So once I went overseas, my whole world just opened up to go, wow, like there's so much more out there than home. These days it's just so much. You can see what's going on the internet. Like back then, you had to go and do it yourself. You had to go and find these places and read about it. Go, this looks great. I'll go there. So that was the great fun thing. You just had to go and find your own adventures. And I think coming back, I remember thinking to myself, what can I do? What job can I do that's going to take me around the world, that I can get paid for, and that I can, have enough money that I've got time. It's a lifestyle. I was looking for a lifestyle. And what was this job that I still didn't know? I was even playing music at the time. I still didn't know that was going to be it. I was still searching for something else. And as I kept going, the music just sort of fell into place. I started to write some songs, and then it was just I followed that direction a bit more. And then I realized, after having the success, this was the job that I've been looking for. And I didn't even realize that was what it was. So I stumbled into it.
Mate, it's so interesting. You mentioned writing music a couple times now, and I think I spoke about this recently with an artist on the show, that there is almost a misconception as a young person who didn't understand behind the scenes of music, that you kind of just think everyone writes their own songs, and then you realize, as you start to hear people speak on their careers and their music, that is not always the case, and that songwriting is a whole nother skill in itself. But you do a beautiful job, mate, and I mean that in the most honest of ways, that the way that your words come together in songs. And even just this morning, I was re-listening to your music, thinking about our conversation today. And Spotify's got that feature now where it transcribes the song as it plays out.
Yep.
I was just looking at some of the words, and I'm like, they're just not the average words that you put pen to paper to explain that kind of feeling. Has songwriting come naturally to you, or is that a skill that you've had to develop time and time again?
I had to develop it, I think. It was one of those things when I first wanted to do it, and trying to write a song, like it was so challenging trying to get the art of writing a good verse, a good chorus, a good bridge, good lyrics, good lyrics that are interesting enough that people think about things in a different way. It's not so straight up and down, not so literal. There's a couple of different meanings that people can get from songs, and it's nice when you get, not every song's like that, of course, but the good ones are, and they make people think about, oh, what is this about? This could have a couple of different meanings. And I think probably that was also part of my fame in the early days. The lyrics that I wrote were very interesting and very heartfelt, and bit different to what everyone else was doing. So that seemed to be really hard on your sleeve kind of, and heartfelt stuff. That was a bit intense at times, but it was just kind of, that's how they came out.
As someone who doesn't love fame, does that almost feel opposite of your natural instinct to expose your heart and your honest feelings?
Well, I didn't even think about it. I just wrote the songs, and that's just what I did. This is what I felt was good, and I like doing those sorts of songs. And I think I didn't think too much about that, about the fame side of it. So I never really did. The only thing that I remember being signed when I got signed to Sony Music, I remember thinking I got scared, a bit nervous, going, "Gosh, my face one day is going to be up on big billboards around, like big posters around the place." And I was like, "That's going to be pretty." Yeah, I wasn't too comfortable about that. Not to mention then you're going to be on TV and videos on TV, or just people just recognize you. And I remember when a bit of success started to happen early on, I remember sort of walking down the street and just a few people sort of doing that second look. And the very first time that starts happening to you is very strange because it's my whole life it's never happened. And then suddenly everyone's like, and they're coming up to you and going, "Are you Pete Murray?" And so it was just like a really weird thing when that started to happen.
It's really weird, but I can imagine it would almost have a very nice feeling that, "Oh, I'm being recognized for something I'm incredibly passionate about." And it kind of reconfirms that you're supposed to be in this space, right?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely. I mean, that's. I think this is where I'm meant to be. I'm a big believer in fate. My mate Charlie years ago that came into my room and said, "I'm going to go get a guitar lesson." I believe I was meant to meet him. I believe he was meant to get me to play guitar. Um, and just these things along the way that how it all happens. That things fall into place. And I think I I feel like we've all got some sort of destiny there, but we've got to find it. And some people are lucky enough to find it, and some aren't. And then, I kind of also believe that if you haven't found what you're supposed to be doing, then you can come back in another life and you get another crack at it. So I feel like, I'm definitely doing what I meant to do. And I think that writing these songs, I can write a song now. I know how to write a good song with good lyrics that can inspire people, make people feel happy or sad or emotional, whatever you're doing there. But I think ultimately what I like doing is having songs that are special to people, and they love those songs and love playing those lyrics, and they want to play again and again because those songs just mean something to them, and it takes them back to a certain time, like you said, when you're 6, you remember going back and singing the songs. See, these songs, you want them to be around forever, so generations will come through and listen to them and have that special feeling.
Yeah, I love that, mate. I want to pull on the thread of fate and destiny a little bit. Find this a really interesting conversation. And funnily enough, this morning I wrote about a page in my little notebook about this theme of destiny. It's just come up a little bit recently in my life, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. And I'm almost coming to a feeling that I think that every man has many destinies that interlace and interweb with each other. And I don't believe that everything that happens to us in our lives is by free will. I think there are certainly things outside of our control, but I like the idea that you can control how you respond and choose which destiny or path you intend to take. And I wonder what your thoughts on all of this are.
Well, I believe in destiny without a doubt. But we do have choices. Like I said, sometimes we don't get there. We don't make those choices to get where we're supposed to be, and you make the wrong decisions. But that's the choices we make in life. But is that meant to be the destiny? Is that, I don't know. Like, I mean, we make those choices along the way. And but like I said, I believe in fate and destiny, and things are too weird that they happen that way. And if you've ever been to a clairvoyant and ever experienced that where they can tell you sometimes the future, and you're going, "Oh, yeah, okay," but then it starts to happen. That's
Did,
kind of like the weird thing.
did you ever have an experience like that early in your life, early in your career, that these moments of recognition have happened a little bit later?
Not so much. No, not early. Just later in life, I did a couple of readings, and it was just like it's funny how things happen, and you just go, wow, how could you predict that? These things are happening. So I believe that there's a bit of a path laid out for us, and we have to try and be guided by what's around us and how things happen to try and to get there. But it's in here where you got to find that as well and think about what you want to do and where you want to go. Because that's really ultimately, it's each of us have an individual feeling of what we want to do, what makes us happy. We're all different, so that's what you got to tune into. And I think, like I said, a lot of my songs talk about that. Talk about follow what makes you happy, what you want to do, and don't stay in something that you're unhappy with. Get out of it. Some people do a job they hate for their whole life in an office and then be on their deathbed and wish that they hadn't done that. You know, you hear that, heard that one time, I think, where there's a lot of guys on the deathbed wish they could go back and change their life and spend more time with their family or do different things so they're not just working all the time. You know, because it's life. You're meant to enjoy it. You also got to work hard for things too, but you know, meant to sort of enjoy it and experience life, not just let it slip away.
Do you think had you not lost your father, you would have had the same ideas and the same beliefs about life that you have today?
I think I would have been fairly similar, but I think the thing for me when Dad died, just experiencing what he did, like you know, he worked his whole life and then sold his business and 12 months later died. And him and Mum had bought a caravan. They were about to travel around Australia to experience life and have fun, and that didn't happen for him. So I learned from that to go, look, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to make sure that I enjoy this life, and I'm going to have time. And that then for me it was like, oh, what have I got to do to try and make this happen? Because there's always sacrifices you've got to make to get where you want to be. And so I think I've always been determined. Like even when I was playing sport when I was younger, had this determination to be successful and to achieve things, to achieve success in whatever I was doing, because that's just how I'm wired. I want to do that. Like music now, I want to still keep going. I don't want to stop. I want to keep putting out new music, and hopefully people still like that, and still playing to large crowds and even larger crowds. You know, my goal is to play to bigger crowds than what I've been doing already. So I still have these goals that drive me to make me to be successful. So that's who I am. But I think, like I said, with Dad, it was more about what happened to him to make sure that wasn't going to happen to me.
The things I'm most interested to ask people who have had success in their space is how they walk the line between ambition and appreciation. Like, I'm a highly ambitious character, and I find that my ambition and my drive to find success in my space means that sometimes I fail to appreciate what I've already created. Is that
Yeah.
a fickle thing for you to balance?
Well, I think we all do that, and I think that especially people that have have drive that they want to be successful, you always have that. But you're right. You do have to stop and go, okay, just look at what I've done so far and take that in, and because that's happiness too. You know, if you're still chasing this thing that's, you know, you're still chasing it, you're never going to be happy. You have to be happy in the moment, in here and now, in the present. That's a really important thing. Not I'll be happy when I achieve this. It's like this is happiness right now. But this is also a journey. And sometimes it's very hard to get to where you want to get. But that's the best part of it is it's the journey of getting there. And all the things that get in your way and stop you and you know, the way you've got to get around them, it's frustrating. All those, you know, those brick walls that come up, it's like, no, the nose, you don't let you go and do this and that. So they're the frustrating things in life, but that is the journey. You don't just want to get to the end and go, hey, I've got all the success. I'm here now because you haven't earned it. You know, like this is a matter of this is the journey we're on. These are all the things that are going to come up against us. We've got to work out how to get around them because that challenges you to become better. Those that give up will never be successful. And, you know, after so many no's or so many brick walls in their way, it's like, oh, it's too hard. I'm going to go do something else. It's easy. It's like, don't fail. Keep going. Don't ever give up. Music, I remember when I first started music, I was actually managing a band at first. So I went to do this management course with Q Music in Queensland. And the lady there, Rose, came in and back then I had the pencil and paper ready to go, write down all the notes. And she was like, okay, there's 3 things that you need in the music business to be successful. So I got it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, wrote them down. She said, okay, and they are persistence, persistence, persistence. I thought, wow, how true is that? So that's the thing I'm talking about now. You will be told no on so many times. You're not good enough. This doesn't work. You're never going to do it. You're not big enough. Whatever. You're too fat. Like things will people will say things to you that will put you off, but it's within yourself that you know, well, I've got to get around. How do I get around this? And this is the challenge. So, like I said, that's the journey to get where you want to go. And that's when you get there, you go, wow, that was hard. But how satisfying is this now because of what I've had to go through to get there?
It's so interesting you say this, Pete, because I've studied success. I've listened to thousands of people speak on podcasts. I've, been around professional speakers at events. I've, interviewed now 252 people on this podcast over the last 4 and a bit years. And I've sat down and deeply thought about what is the most consistent theme to each and every one of these people's success in their space. And the best way I could sum it up is legendary sports promoter Barry Hearn once said that I wasn't the brightest candle in the room, but I always burnt the longest. And I'm like, I don't know that there's a better answer than that.
Pretty true, isn't it?
It is.
And they're the guys that just you hang in there and you just keep doing it and you keep doing it and keep doing it. And the guys that give up drop off.
Well, as your song Opportunity says, it's not too far away. Sometimes
That's
it's
it.
holding the faith, right? Believing that it's
That's right.
destined for you.
We've all got the destiny there. We just got to chase it. You got to find what is your destiny.
How do you feel about, the time in your life, you said in your 30s where your career really took off, is a very different time in the music industry to what it is right now. Do you feel that there is more opportunity for the next generation, or do you think that that opportunity is mixed up in a whole lot of challenges that, maybe the naked eye can't recognize?
It's very different. Music changes so much all the time. Like I think even just going back to the 70s and 80s and 90s, like how much it's changed every decade. It changes, it keeps changing. And you wonder what the change is going to be next. I mean, surely it can't change again. Can it? This seems to be like where it's going to end up, but I don't know. Yeah, in the early days, I guess the labels were in control of everything. They control what music went to commercial radio. And, I think in Australia, I talk about Australia really, but there were, if you were indie or first start, you'd probably get Triple J would be the guys that would come to you. But then Triple J wouldn't support acts all the way through. So they would help them start, but then maybe not finish the job. So a lot of bands that weren't getting Triple J support and weren't getting commercial would finish. They just couldn't keep going. So Australia's very, very small country for that. So having that, trying to work that success and get it going in those days, I guess you really had to work very hard to try and, if you're independent, you keep going. Or with the label, you still have to work very hard as well. But having longevity, writing songs that would hang around for a long time, probably for me was the goal to do that. These days, and even internationally, it was very hard to try and get success. Very hard back then, unless you got an international deal. These days, the Spotify is kind of becoming a bit more like the record label. It chooses who gets on playlisting now. So you're in a situation now where there's still kind of like a label that chooses what playlist you're going to get on. And as the artist, it's just changed. But they're now the label, and iTunes, they get to choose what goes out and where it goes and whether it stays in this country, whether it goes to another country. And so it's the same thing. The artists, have a little bit more freedom. There's a little bit more chance of getting international success now than what there was years ago. That's probably the only thing I can say.
Do you think that, you mentioned there the difference between our national market for music and entertainment as a whole, but also the international market? I think that there's probably a consistency to most people in Australia have these aspirations of what is available in the States or even the UK as maybe the next step before the States. Was there ever, I know you've performed and toured internationally, but was there ever a thought, feeling, potential to go and live and really uproot yourself and be overseas full time?
Well, yeah, I was really, yeah, in the early days, I was very, very keen to do that. Unfortunately, with the record label, they were very supportive of me in Australia, but internationally they did nothing. So, and when you're with that label, I got shelved. There's the term you get put on the shelf, and they won't release you, but no one else can release you either. So that's a pretty tough time. So I was definitely keen to go and live overseas and make things happen, but I couldn't get my music released. These days it's a little different. You can get on the streaming, you can get released. And people can hear you overseas. So that's one thing. I remember the early days, people even couldn't see my videos because they weren't released over there. So everything was sort of locked down to each country. So, which made it very challenging. But yeah, like I said, these days, people can access everything now from wherever you are around the world.
How do you deal with that at the time? Was there frustration and anger?
Both. Yeah, really frustrating. And it did make me angry, because I could see other friends of mine who were still touring overseas. Guys like John Butler and Xavier Rudd, similar kind of genre, and they were constantly able to go and tour, and I couldn't do it. That was very frustrating for me. So, but that was my destiny. I'm trying to change that now. At least I've got the freedom to try and get some music happening overseas now. So
are you signed with a label now? You're independent?
I'm independent now.
Okay. And do you feel, obviously that comes with more weight of personal responsibility, but a whole lot more freedom. How do you weigh up that personal responsibility that maybe wasn't once yours to handle?
Well, now it's good because I can control it to a certain degree. Like I said, Spotify still control if they want to help you and try and really push you onto playlists overseas, but you can still be released. and people can still hear you. So it's a matter of find your fan base to get them to listen to music. That's the challenge, I think, now. But yeah, the freedom is I've got that now and I can do that. So it's nice to come full circle. I started independently, signed to a major, and now I'm back independent. And the first singles came out 3 weeks ago or something like that. And we'll have an album coming out next year. So it's an exciting time.
It's a very exciting time. I wonder for you, like music is a big bunch of what we talked about today, but as I mentioned earlier on in this chat today, there are so many pieces to the Pete Murray puzzle that make you
Yeah.
the man that you are, and also, I'm sure, support the work that you do. Like, what are the fundamentals in your life and the practical routines that you could share with the people listening that help you stay grounded, but also help you get the best out of what you're trying to do professionally?
I think staying grounded is probably just comes from within who the person is. I grew up in a small country town, so
Whereabouts?
I've always had that grounding. I think I was successful in my sports, and I remember early on, my mum said to me, "Look, you've had a lot of success with things, but don't go bragging about that. People don't like people that brag, and if you have to brag, then you're not good enough because you've got to tell people how good you are." So I thought that's a really good point. Going, yeah, okay, that makes total sense, and I didn't feel like I needed to do that anyway, and I don't like doing that. So I do laugh when some people do sort of carry on about how good they are. I'm going, like, obviously you've got to tell people because you're not that good. So, but I remember being a kid and mum sort of drilling that into me, and I think that's just been forever with me, that you just don't sort of go blowing your own trumpet. You are who you are, and especially in Australia, people don't like that.
Yeah, is that a positive or a negative, you think? Because we do experience tall poppy syndrome. I completely get what you mean
Well,
about being humble and leaning on your skill set as the major action piece of your story. But I
I
wonder, do we struggle to support people in Australia because of that complex?
I think at first the tall poppies thing can come in if you've had success. It can tend to happen to you after that. But I found with my career, I probably got a little bit of that on the third album that I did. The first two albums are pretty good, but people probably get sick of you because it's so small. They get to hit your songs blaring all the time, and maybe they just get sick of it. And I get that. So you experience a little bit of the tall poppy thing, but I think I haven't noticed so much as you get a bit older. Maybe people just forget about you, and they don't worry about so much because you kind of had the success and you've been around a while. So they probably maybe have a bit more respect for you, that you are working hard, and it's not as easy to do that, to have the success. So that's about the only thing I can think of. But I think, yeah, definitely early on, if we tend to, when someone has success at first, it's like we love them, and then everyone tries to bring them down, and it's just, it's just what happens in this country, unfortunately. So whether that will
Mm.
ever change, I'm not too sure.
How was your experience on SAS? Because that's quite a revealing show and a revealing series, and certainly people have their opinions on the characters that appear on that series. I loved that series of the show. I find it quite interesting. It's probably the one reality show that I actually spend some time watching.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it, to be honest. And there are some characters on there. And look, probably the negative thing about that for me is that the TV plays on that negativity too much, and it's not all negative in there at all. They definitely, the way they edit it makes people look bad, worse than what they really are. So that's, I guess, that's reality TV. But I love the show. I love the discipline. I love the whole thing. And I went in there with I guess, um, to be a soldier, and to do as I was told. And I thought it was great. I loved every minute of it, and it's scary at times and pushed you, and it was really great. But ultimately, the guys that were there pushing you, they want you to get to the end. They want you to succeed, and they're trying to help you get there. Even though it's just they're drilling in this discipline to try and push you, and also to get rid of the weak ones that can't do it, which is what they're doing when you're in the army anyway. So they're doing what they normally would do. But I thought it was great. I mean, obviously disappointed, when I fell and dislocated my elbow. That was kind of a disappointing moment. At that stage, I myself, I think, and maybe Yana Pittman were the only guys that hadn't failed anything. So for me, being the oldest male, I was pretty proud of that. I hadn't failed anything on the show except for the dislocated elbow was a big failure. So if you want to look at it like that,
One of those contingent events that can't be controlled, that's for sure. Mate, I
no,
wonder
that's
for
right.
you, the influence behind you. You're about to go on tour, and it's conveniently a summer tour, which feels very Pete Murray of you, the excuse to travel along the coastline of Australia and surf at different locations and enjoy what summer has
Yeah.
to offer here. How excited are you for the tour, and what does that tour time actually look like for you? Is there a little bit of luxury to enjoy yourself and enjoy that time, or is it pretty much foot down and
Touring's,
work hard?
you don't ever get too much time when you're touring. We try to sort of compact it as best we can so I can get back home to the family. So it's pretty full on, but I love what I do. The traveling to the gig is the thing that we probably don't like as much. But playing the show with my mates and the band, they're so good to play with. That's what we love. We do that for that 2 hours that we play is worth all the traveling for the day and the next day, because we just have such a great time playing those songs and playing live and entertaining people. So it's a good feeling to be doing that.
It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and we'll make sure that we put up the links to your tour in the show notes so people can jump on, hear the new single, get out and see you live. Mate, it's been a pleasure.
Cheers, mate. Nice talking to you too. So let me know if you're coming to another show. Be good to catch up in person.
Mate, would love to. I'll talk to you soon, eh?